As I said before, unequal development can have quite a significant impact on conflict and on conflict dynamics, particularly if it's on an intergroup basis. Conflict is seen most often, and I think quite rightly, as a process of destruction, as a process that breaks down society, breaks down relationships between state and citizen, breaks down the economy, interrupts economic processes. It can also be creative. As I said before, no ungoverned spaces, no vacuum. Something is always going on, and if the state retreats, something else will be happening. It doesn't necessarily mean that what's happening is positive or can be integrated into a post-conflict settlement, but it might be able to. It depends. And the risk of conflict and return to conflict generally remains high in states, especially if it's a negotiated settlement. If you have the complete defeat of an opposing party, then the return to conflict is perhaps less likely, because the opposing party is not likely to be able to regroup, to rearm, and to pose a new threat to the state. Whereas if you have a negotiated end, it means people put their weapons to one side, but they can often still pick them back up. State building and development are seen as solutions not only by the international community, but also by governments after conflict. So post-conflict governments want to stay in power, same as any politicians, they want to stay in power, and to do that they have to generate some kind of legitimacy. Dealing with the legacy of the conflict, giving people a stake in a peaceful future, is partly how they do that. I said here development success also provides performance legitimacy, and what I mean by this is legitimacy gained by demonstrating that you are doing what you are supposed to do. I mean, in some ways it's a bit like, what do you want, a cookie? You know, you're supposed to generate health services, you're supposed to deliver basic education and drinking water and sanitation and all those things. But in situations where people don't expect anything from the government, because the government's never really been there for them, if you can start to show them that they can rely on the government for basic services, then the government develops a legitimacy in the eyes of the people that it might not have otherwise had. And finally, I would say, I'm a security person in terms of background, but I would say that security and justice reform are really important, because they act at a number of levels in terms of rebuilding relationships between groups within society, acknowledging the experiences of people during conflict, that they were wrong, that they should be acknowledged and not just brushed over and then you move on, but also security and justice at the national level, so preventing incursions from neighbouring groups, preventing a return to conflict which might result from insecure borders or from the state being challenged from below.